Hey guys, welcome to Boxing Squad for boxing news and views from around the internet. The WBO has dealt Dillian Whyte another piece of bad news, rejecting his appeal in relation to Oleksandr Usyk being the mandatory challenger in the WBO. Usyk was handed that by the WBO a couple of months ago, courtesy of his super champion status, which had been at cruiserweight. He claimed it, and that was his right, and Dillian Whyte did not like that. He launched an appeal, and the WBA has gone through the process of hearing that appeal, receiving submissions, and ultimately it is ruled against him. But not only that, in some of the language that the WBO is using, it references his recent alleged failed drug test, and it's actually not really mincing its words either. So I'll quickly get through some of this introductory section. So this effectively lays out Dillian Whyte lodged an appeal in July. That followed Oleksandr Usyk being elevated to the mandatory status. Oleksandr Usyk responds with a motion to dismiss. Both were granted extra time until the end of July to lodge submissions and evidence and such. And Dillian Whyte does so, as does Oleksandr Usyk. It also says here, on August 1st, 2019, the committee issued an order granting the parties until the next day to express their respective positions regarding whether the committee may take notice of the fact Whyte was provisionally suspended by the WBC pending investigation into a failed drug test, and what effect, if any, this fact has on, among other things, the remedy requested by Whyte in this appeal. Both parties filed petitions on this matter within the deadline granted. Therefore, the appeal was finally submitted for adjudication on August 2nd, 2019. So that language there regarding the drug test, it is just saying Whyte failed the drug test. And I'm not sure it really picked its language too carefully there, because obviously Whyte is still going through a process. We don't really have many facts, if any, on the situation, except there was some sort of incident, but Whyte was cleared to fight. So this next portion in this judgment that the WBO has issued, it just goes through the circumstances in which Usyk sort of ascended to the mandatory spot, and then talks about the appeal process in terms of what was happening, and it calls it the facts of the matter. And at number 12 here, it actually says, shortly after defeating Rivas and becoming the WBC interim heavyweight world champion, Whyte was provisionally suspended by the WBC pending an investigation into an adverse finding into a drug test related to the Rivas match. And the analysis here says it is the policy of the World Boxing Organization to encourage its champions to pursue recognized status as undisputed world champions and to unify the championships of the four major world sanctioning organizations, WBO, WBA, WBC, and IBF. One of the elements considered by the WBO in determining whether a boxer deserves the designation of super champion is if the prospective super champion has unified the championships of more than one of the four major world sanctioning bodies. Boxers who are designated with the status of super champion qualify for certain rights and privileges under the WBO regulations. Among others, if requested by a super champion, the championship committee may designate the super champion as the mandatory challenger for the immediate higher or lower division. So I guess Usyk could have gone down to light heavyweight if he'd have wanted to go that direction, but I guess that probably, boiling down that far, would have been quite a thing. That's probably more something you'd see at a lower weight division. As such, the discretionary power granted to the WBO Championship Committee to grant the request of a WBO Super Champion to be designated as the mandatory challenger in the immediate higher division is clear. So, I guess, not everyone likes their Oleksandr Usyk, who hasn't had a fight at heavyweight yet. He's scheduled to have his first fight in the division in October. Not everyone likes that he's been made the automatic mandatory. And actually, some of the facts, if we just go back to it here, I sort of skirted past that. But back in March, Dillian Whyte, who was the number one rated contender in the WBO, at that point in time, they actually sent a letter to the WBO president, Francisco Paco Valcárcel, requesting that Whyte be designated as the mandatory challenger in the heavyweight division without further delay. And they said at that time, "Wherefore, we regrettably cannot grant your request at this time. Nonetheless, we strongly advise Mr. Whyte keep active in competition." I mean, Dillian Whyte and his team and his representatives would have known full well that Oleksandr Usyk being the super champion, it was only a matter of time before he claimed that status. He had been due to fight in May 2019, so Whyte was obviously trying to get ahead of Usyk being in the division and claiming that mandatory status. As it is right now, Dillian Whyte has dropped to number 3 in the WBO, Tyson Fury passing him at number 2, and Oleksandr Usyk, at courtesy of his mandatory status, is number 1. So if we go down here through the analysis section, and here it says, it is the uncontested fact that Usyk became the first ever undisputed junior heavyweight, so cruiserweight, champion of the world, July 21st, 2018. Usyk's designation as mandatory challenger of the WBO heavyweight division is strongly supported by the record. The WBO Championship Committee issued a determination in full compliance of its faculties pursuant to the yada yada yada. While Whyte's record is impressive and could support the designation as a mandatory challenger, the role of the committee is not to say whether it would have reached a different conclusion, only whether the WBO Championship Committee is reasonably supported by the record. Accordingly, there is no basis to reverse the WBO Championship Committee's determination designating Usyk as the mandatory challenger. Although we need go further in affirming the WBO Championship resolution and to deny Whyte's appeal, we stress that the petitioner's victory over Rivas and provisional suspension by the WBC councils in the same direction. If Whyte is permanently suspended by the WBC, the WBO Championship Committee would have ample discretion to take measures against Whyte. To this effect, the WBO encourages and expects its boxers to be an example of the highest ideals and spirit of sportsmanship. These characteristics are incompatible with the use of drugs or stimulants before or during a contest. Conversely, if Whyte is confirmed as the WBC interim heavyweight world champion, he will be bound by the WBC rules and regulations, which state that a WBC interim world champion shall be considered a true WBC world title for all purposes, other than which respect to a bout versus the actual champion, absent any order to the contrary from the WBC and its sole discretion. As a true WBC title holder, Whyte will be able to defend the WBC title with a champion of the WBO only. So effectively, it's basically saying if he is cleared of allegations of drug use and the WBC interim status is retained by Dillian Whyte, he's going to drop out of the WBO rankings. But some of this was in motion ahead of that fight with Oscar Rivas, and Dillian Whyte, as he should be, was keeping his options open because he was number 1 and in both the WBC and WBO at the time that he lodged this appeal against Usyk being the mandatory challenger. Okay, so we'll just go down here further. Consequently, there is no feasible scenario under Whyte's current circumstances in which he may be designated as the mandatory challenger of the WBO heavyweight division. At the brief conclusion section, it says Whyte's appeal is denied and the WBO Championship Committee resolution issued on June 22, 2019 is affirmed. The parties are advised that yada yada yada, final decision on the merits of this controversy. The parties are further advised that pursuant to Section 35 of the... I'll just skip through this. So they can effectively take this to court, to the district court in Puerto Rico. So if Dillian Whyte doesn't like what's happening here with Usyk, that his appeal has been denied, he can take it to court. Would he do that? I think in his circumstances right now, with what's hanging over his head in terms of the alleged failed test, I'm not sure that that would actually really sort of help his case to any extent. And the thing is now, is it worth him even pursuing this any further? Because if he is cleared of these allegations of drug use, then he'll be the WBC interim champion. So he wouldn't be able to be in the WBO rankings. So I guess this might be the final word on this whole situation. But in respect of the WBO, in respect of Whyte's current circumstances, just some of the way that they've sort of phrased some of the language in there, it doesn't, it's not exactly saying that it's an allegation. It's saying a failed test, adverse finding, drug use, all that sort of stuff. So they haven't really minced their words. They haven't sort of stepped around it and said it's just an allegation at this point, yet to be proven. And just on that, I guess the whole question right now for you, everyone else, is what is going on? Where is the B sample? What is happening here? This is dragging on for weeks now with silence, and obviously for many people, the absence of information does create a vacuum which is filled by speculation. And in a case where there is no information forthcoming, and I guess in terms of Whyte, he is trying to make sure he does everything by the book here and not say anything that could jeopardize his case or position. I mean, I guess people are wondering, well, does it really take this long to get a B sample? The fact that there is no reported B sample at this point, people will make a case to say that actually that doesn't look good in terms of public perception for Dillian Whyte. But we have to sort of see this through, whatever this is and where this is going to go. But that question, where is the B sample? It's not going to go away, is it? And I guess Dillian Whyte, if he, because the WBC president Mauricio Suleiman came out, a few days ago or a week ago, clarifying that it was, Whyte wasn't suspended from fighting it, but there was actually just a suspension at the moment because of this case over the interim heavyweight championship and the potential WBO mandatory status. So he could still fight, but I think on the face of it, would fans want to see him back in the ring right now? I think with everything hanging over him at the moment while he's trying to clear his name, it wouldn't make sense to fight. So forever how long this drags on, it could end up going for several months. Who knows? This could end up impacting Whyte in terms of missing out on another fight in 2019. There has been talk from his promoter Eddie Hearn that he expects Whyte will fight once more in 2019. But with all this going on, if it's not cleared up anytime soon, maybe that will be wishful thinking. This could impact Whyte in terms of, even if he is cleared, by the loss of at least one fight. We shall see. But where is the B sample? It's a good question. What do you make of the situation? Dillian Whyte losing his appeal against Oleksandr Usyk being made the WBO mandatory. Drop a comment, loud and often. Hit like, hit subscribe. Follow me on Twitter, boxing_squared. I'm out.